Hello there, fellow insomniacs and history enthusiasts. Welcome back to Boring History for Sleep, where we explore historical facts so tedious they'll have you snoring faster than a Roman senator during Cicero's third hour of speech-making. I'm your narrator, and tonight we're diving into why you, yes, you, with your indoor plumbing, food safety standards, and general aversion to being stabbed, wouldn't survive a single day in ancient Rome. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. So fluff your pillows, adjust your blankets, and prepare to drift off as I explain why your pampered modern existence has completely failed to prepare you for the chaotic nightmare that was daily life in the eternal city. Sweet dreams, or as the Romans would say, somnia dulcia, right before they died of some horrible preventable disease. Let's begin with how your day would start. That gentle alarm on your phone. Replace it with the excruciating sounds of Rome awakening at dawn. The city never really slept, but things got especially noisy once the sun rose. Streets immediately filled with shouting vendors, braying animals, clattering carts on stone roads, and the general cacophony of 1 million people crammed into a pre-industrial urban center with zero noise regulations. You'd open your eyes in your insular apartment, that's ancient Roman for death trap tenement building. Unless you were wealthy, you'd live in one of these rickety multi-story structures built with minimal safety standards and maximum profit margins. Your studio apartment would be a single room, probably on an upper floor. The lower floors were more expensive because they were safer and had water access. Your building would have been slapped together with concrete of questionable quality, wooden beams that were already rotting, and the constant threat of collapse or fire. No big deal. Speaking of fire, there's no electricity, so you either woke up with the sun or used oil lamps that were basically portable arson devices. These clay lamps burned olive oil and had an open flame that could easily tip over onto your flammable bedding. Unsurprisingly, Rome burned down repeatedly throughout its history. The Great Fire under Nero was just the most famous of many, many conflagrations that regularly turned neighborhoods into charcoal. Your bed wouldn't be that comfy memory foam mattress you ordered online. It would be a wooden frame with ropes or leather straps creating a springy base topped with a mattress stuffed with straw, wool, or if you were fancy, feathers. All of these materials attracted bugs like crazy. Bed bugs, fleas, and lice were such common bedfellows that Romans just considered them a normal part of life. Insect repellents consisted mainly of strong-smelling herbs that did little except make you smell like a walking salad while still getting bitten. Ready to use the bathroom? Hope you're not shy. Your apartment probably doesn't have a toilet. Instead, you'd use a chamber pot, which you'd then dump out your window into the street below. Yes, really. If you've ever wondered why Roman men wore togas, it was partially to shield themselves from this aerial bombardment of human waste. The standard morning greeting in Rome wasn't "good morning," but "watch out below." If you're lucky, your building might have public latrines on the ground floor. These were communal toilets. Think long benches with holes and zero privacy. You'd sit right next to your neighbors, chatting about the latest gladiatorial matches while doing your business. And instead of toilet paper, there's a communal sponge on a stick, sitting in a bucket of vinegar water. Yes, you read that correctly. A communal sponge that everyone uses. Let that sink in while I remind you that antibiotics wouldn't be invented for another 1900 years. Time for a refreshing morning shower. Nope. Romans did bathe regularly, but not in the morning and not in private bathrooms. The public baths were an afternoon social activity. Your morning hygiene would consist of a quick wipe down with water from a basin, maybe with some olive oil to clean your skin. Soap existed but wasn't common. Instead, you'd rub yourself with oil, then scrape it off with a curved metal tool called
a strigil, taking dead skin and dirt with it. Exfoliating Roman style. Now for breakfast. Hope you like bread, soaked in watered-down wine, because that's what's on the menu.
Romans didn't do big breakfasts. You'd grab some slightly stale bread left over from yesterday, maybe some olives or cheese if you were lucky, and dip it in posca, a mixture of water and sour wine vinegar that would make modern prison hooch seem like a fine vintage. No coffee, no tea, just room temperature bread wine soup to start your day. Delicious. Time to brush your teeth. Just kidding. Toothbrushes weren't a thing yet. You might rinse your mouth with water or wine, maybe rub your teeth with a cloth. If you were health conscious, you'd use tooth powder made from crushed bones, oyster shells, charcoal, and various herbs. Some Romans used their own urine as mouthwash because they believed its ammonia content cleaned teeth. This actually worked somewhat, but at what cost? The phrase morning breath takes on a whole new meaning in ancient Rome. Now for getting dressed, forget about your comfortable cotton t-shirt and jeans. Men are wearing tunics, basically a T-shaped dress made of itchy wool. Women get a longer version called a stola. In winter, these garments would be unbearably hot and scratchy, but at least wool is somewhat water-resistant against Roman rain. During hot Italian summers, that wool outfit would be a sweat-generating torture device. And remember, deodorant hasn't been invented yet. Everyone stank. The entire city had a collective funk that modern humans cannot even comprehend. If you're a Roman citizen of status, you'd also need to awkwardly wrap yourself in a toga, 6 to 9 yards of heavy woolen fabric that you couldn't put on without help. Imagine wearing a queen-sized bedsheet in the Mediterranean heat while trying to look dignified. The toga was so unwieldy that even Romans hated wearing them, but fashion is fashion, even in the ancient world. Think of it as the ancient equivalent
of uncomfortable high heels or neckties, completely impractical but socially required. You know what's wild?
We lose our minds when our favorite shirt shrinks in the dryer, while Romans were out here wearing the same scratchy wool outfit for months without washing it. I'd last maybe 15 minutes before having a complete meltdown over the public toilets.
Alone, can you imagine sharing a poop sponge with strangers and they thought we're the barbarians? Anyway, time to leave your apartment and head to work.
Hope you have good health insurance, because the streets of Rome were basically an injury lawsuit waiting to happen. There were no traffic lights, no lane markers, and no real traffic rules. Carts, animals, and pedestrians all fought for space in narrow streets. During daylight hours, large wagons were actually banned from the city because they caused too much congestion, so all deliveries happened at night, ensuring nobody ever got a decent night's sleep. The streets themselves were a hazard. Some were paved with stone, but many were just hard-packed dirt that turned to mud when it rained. Open sewers ran down the middle or sides of streets. Those stepping stones at crosswalks that you see in Pompeii? Those weren't just for keeping your feet dry, they were for avoiding literal rivers of waste washing down the street. Watch your step. And the crowds. Rome during the Empire had somewhere around 1 million residents crammed into about 5 square miles. Manhattan today has about 1.6 million people in 23 square miles. So Rome was roughly 4 times as densely populated as modern Manhattan. Imagine the most crowded subway platform you've ever experienced, except it's everywhere, all the time, and everyone smells terrible. Speaking of smells, the olfactory experience of Rome would immediately overwhelm your modern sensibilities. Wood smoke, animal dung, human waste, rotting food, body odor, tanning leather, and the occasional waft of incense or roasting meat all combined into a smell so powerful it would make your eyes water. Romans burned incense and carried sweet-smelling herbs not because they loved the fragrance, but as ancient gas masks against the city stench. Now, what about your job? Unless you were born into wealth, you'd be working hard, physical labor, or a trade. Craftspeople, shop owners, food vendors, construction workers. Most Romans worked from dawn until dusk. And workplace safety? Completely non-existent. No hard hats, no safety harnesses, no workers' compensation. If you got injured, that was just tough luck. Hope your family can support you because there's no disability insurance either. Let's talk about lunch. Unlike breakfast, midday meals were more substantial. If you're a working-class Roman, you'd probably buy something from a thermopolium, ancient fast food joints that lined the streets. These had counters with large jars sunken into them, containing various stews and soups kept warm over small braziers. You'd bring your own bowl or rent one, and the vendor would ladle out whatever gelatinous mystery stew was available that day. What was in this stew? Best not to ask too many questions. Food safety standards didn't exist. Meat was often on the verge of spoiling, especially in summer. Garum, fermented fish sauce that Romans put on everything, could range from delicious to downright putrid, depending on the quality. And remember, germ theory is about 1-800 years in the future. The concept of washing hands before food preparation, not a priority. Getting thirsty under the Italian sun? There are public fountains throughout the city supplied by Rome's famous aqueducts. The water quality was actually pretty good when it entered the city, but lead pipes and open-air fountains meant contamination was common. Still, it was safer than drinking from the Tiber River, which was essentially a flowing toxic waste dump. Most people just drank watered-down wine instead, which was safer thanks to the alcohol content killing some pathogens. Even children drank diluted wine instead of water. Romans weren't encouraging childhood alcoholism, they were just trying not to die from waterborne diseases. Speaking of diseases, let's talk about healthcare in ancient Rome. Feeling sick? Medical care ranged from surprisingly advanced to absolutely bonkers. Some Roman physicians had genuine anatomical knowledge and effective herbal treatments. Others would prescribe gladiator blood, owl eggs, or elephant trunk powder. It was medical roulette. Surgery existed, but without anesthesia or antibiotics. The best painkiller available was opium or getting blackout drunk before procedures. Infection was so common after surgery that it was considered a normal part of the healing process rather than a complication. The afternoon in Rome brought a break for many citizens. If you could afford it, you'd head to the public baths for the highlight of your day. Roman baths were part spa, part gym, part social club. You'd exercise, sweat in the steam room, soak in heated pools, get a massage, and most importantly, gossip and network. Business deals, political alliances, and social climbing all happened while naked in the bathhouse. Hope you're not body conscious. The bathing process followed a specific sequence: exercise to work up a sweat, then the tepidarium, warm room, the caldarium, hot room, and finally the frigidarium, cold plunge pool. Sounds luxurious, right? Well, remember that hundreds of people cycled through these same pools daily. The water was changed occasionally. There were no chemicals to kill bacteria. Pink eye and fungal infections were so common they were just considered a normal part of the bathing experience. But hey, at least you'd finally be clean. Well, Roman standard clean, which by modern standards is still pretty gross. Can you imagine bragging about your self-care Sunday bath routine to a Roman? Oh, I have my own private bathing room where clean, hot water comes out of the wall whenever I want it, and I use it alone. They'd think you were either the emperor or a pathological liar. Meanwhile, we panic if the shower water pressure drops slightly. I'd probably faint from culture shock before I made it to noon in ancient Rome. As evening approaches, it's time for dinner, the main meal of the Roman day. If you're wealthy, you'd recline on dining couches and enjoy a multi-course meal served by slaves. If you're an average citizen, you'd be sitting at a table, eating a simple meal of vegetables, bread, cheese, and occasionally meat. Most Romans only ate meat a few times a month, usually during public festivals or religious celebrations when it was distributed. And forget about those foods you take for granted. No potatoes, no tomatoes, no corn, no chocolate, no coffee. All these came from the Americas, which wouldn't be discovered by Europeans for another 400 years. No sugar either. Honey was the main sweetener, and it was expensive. Your flavor enhancers would be garum, that fermented fish sauce again, vinegar, and herbs. Dinner would be eaten relatively early by modern standards, as artificial lighting was expensive and inefficient. Oil lamps and candles provided minimal illumination and were fire hazards in those wooden tenement buildings. Most people simply went to bed not long after sunset unless there was a festival, or they could afford to burn a lot of lamp oil. Speaking of festivals, they were the ancient equivalent of Netflix, the main entertainment for the masses. Romans loved their public celebrations, with over 100 public holidays annually by the late Empire. These featured religious ceremonies, theatrical performances, chariot races, and of course, gladiatorial combat. Nothing says wholesome family entertainment like watching prisoners and slaves fight to the death for your amusement. The Colosseum could hold 50,000 spectators, and events there would last all day. No comfortable stadium seating either. You'd be on stone benches for hours. No concession stands selling overpriced hot dogs. You'd bring your own food or buy from vendors outside. And the bathroom situation? Let's just say you'd better take care of business before finding your seat, because the intermissions were few and the facilities primitive. Other evening entertainment options included theatre performances, mostly comedies with crude physical humor or tragedies where everyone dies horribly, betting on chariot races, the NASCAR of ancient Rome, or religious ceremonies, which were also major social events. If you couldn't afford those, there were always taverns, where you could drink rough wine and play dice games, often rigged in the house's favor. Some things never change. Night has fallen in Rome, and it's time to head home. Better hurry, because Roman streets after dark were incredibly dangerous. There was no street lighting except for major festivals. No police force either. The urban cohorts and vigiles provided some security, but they were mainly for putting out fires and stopping riots, not preventing muggings or assault. The smart move was to bring your own light, a clay lamp or torch, and travel in groups. Wealthy Romans would have slaves carry torches and act as bodyguards. Everyone else just tried to get home before complete darkness, or traveled in numbers. Juvenal, a Roman satirist, wrote about how people regularly wrote their wills before going out at night, only partly joking, "Back at your apartment, it's time for sleep. Remember that bug-infested bed I mentioned earlier? Here it is again, except now it's pitch dark, and you can hear the rats scurrying across the floor. Your neighbors are arguing through the paper-thin walls, someone's baby is crying, and there's a drunk guy singing in the street below. The smell of urine and waste from the streets wafts through your window, which you can't close because then you'd suffocate in the heat. Roman apartment buildings had no heating or cooling systems. In winter, your options were small braziers burning, charcoal, hello carbon monoxide poisoning, or just piling on blankets. In summer, there was no relief from the Italian heat, except opening windows to catch any breeze. Many people just slept on their roofs or in public spaces during heat waves. As you lie there, itching from flea bites, listening to the sounds of urban Roman nightlife, you might reflect on your day of physical labor, questionable food, omnipresent, filth, and constant discomfort, only to realize you get to do it all again tomorrow. Ancient Rome wasn't just a place. It was an endurance test that modern humans would fail spectacularly. Seriously though, we think we're roughing it when our Wi-Fi goes down for 10 minutes. Romans were out here just raw dogging life without antibiotics, air conditioning, or even the basic concept of germs. I lose my mind if my DoorDash order takes an extra 15 minutes. I wouldn't last half a day in ancient Rome before I'd be begging Jupiter to strike me down with lightning. And Romans just lived like this every day without being able to tweet about how much it sucked. Mind-blowing, really. The truly wild thing is that Romans thought they were the height of civilization. And relative to other ancient societies, they kind of were. They had aqueducts, concrete that could set underwater, sophisticated legal codes, and a complex governmental system. They looked down on barbarians while sharing communal bathroom sponges. The cognitive dissonance is amazing. So there you have it. A typical day in ancient Rome. From the moment you woke up until you fell asleep, it was a non-stop carnival of sights, sounds, and smells that would overwhelm your modern sensibilities. No privacy, no sanitation, no safety standards, and the constant background threat of violence, disease, fire, or building collapse. The next time you complain about your morning commute while sitting in your climate-controlled car, sipping your fancy coffee, breathing air that doesn't smell like an open sewer, remember the ancient Roman who would view your life as an unimaginable utopia of comfort and luxury. If you're still awake at this point, though I hope you're not, consider how fortunate we are to live in an age where basic survival isn't our daily preoccupation, where our biggest complaint might be that our phone battery dies too quickly rather than worrying about actual wild dogs roaming city streets at night. Sleep well, my friends, in your clean, comfortable beds, free from parasites and the constant fear of your apartment building collapsing. You've earned it by being born in the right millennium. And if you enjoyed this journey into the grimy, smelly past, remember to like and subscribe. Leave a comment about which historical period you'd least like to experience. Maybe we'll cover it in our next episode of Boring History for Sleep. Until next time, good night, sleep tight, and don't let the ancient Roman bedbugs bite, because they definitely would.